Shavua Tov, the song of Haazinu, this week's parsha, is a song, but we don't sing it. And yet it perhaps is the most important song in the Torah, especially in light of current events. We'll get to that presently. What exactly is the song of Haazinu? Why don't we sing it? And how is it a witness? God says in last week's parsha that this song shall answer as a witness about my people. And then he also mentions that he's going to cause to be witnesses the heavens and the earth. They will be witnesses. How is a song a witness? How are the heavens and earth witnesses? What's going on here? So in order to understand the questions and the context, let's just take a quick review of what is in Haazinu. It starts off with God calling upon the heavens and the earth to listen to his words. And it talks about God choosing Israel, bringing us forth from Egypt, bringing us to Mount Sinai on the wings of eagles. All of these are done in poetic phrases, which just a couple of words can cover what takes in the narrative sections many, many verses and even chapters. And God then bringing us to the land of Israel, where there will be tremendous bounty. We will eat from the fat places of the earth. And then we will ourselves grow fat, rebel, kick against God, as the word is vativat, to kick, to rebel, to follow the foreign gods, the idols of the other nations, and God's wrath will then come. There will be exile. There will be a desire to erase Israel from the pages of history, but God will not do that in order that people shouldn't say that God is unable to fulfill his promise to Israel, the same argument that Moses used with God after the Israelites had sinned with the golden calf. And in the end, God will take vengeance upon his enemies and will restore his people to their greatness, to their land. The nations of the world will sing the praises of Israel, and the land shall atone for God's people. So there's a happy ending to this story. So that is the content of Haazinu. So some commentaries say that this is straight out rebuke. It is a rebuke. It is a warning. If you do that, if you indeed grow fat and rebel, this and that nasty thing will happen. But in the end, don't be broken, because the end is going to be okay. So it's a warning. Well, if it's a warning, then it makes sense why we're not exactly singing it. But they did sing it in the temple on the Sabbaths at the additional offering, and the question is, why? Why would one sing that even there? What's unique about that situation? Why divide it up into 6 parts? Maybe we'll answer that as we go as well. So that remains a question, but if it's a warning, I understand why we're not singing it, and I also understand now what the element of witnessing is. Because in Jewish law, witnesses have 2 functions in capital cases. One function, of course, is to tell the court what they saw, but in capital cases, they also have to be an active participant in the person's crime. How so? They have to warn the person that if you do this, let's say they see somebody about to make a sacrifice to an idol. They say to that person, if you sacrifice that thing to the idol, that animal to the idol, you're violating a Torah commandment, XYZ. They may quote the verse, and the punishment for this is death by whatever it's going to be. So in other words, they have to both testify what they saw, but first they have to warn the person. And it could be that this function of warning the people is what this song is doing. It is basically warning the people, and that is a function of witnesses. And the heavens and the earth are testifying that they see that we were indeed warned, and therefore God can carry out the sentence, the punishment that is mentioned in Haazinu. Okay, that covers a lot of bases, but let's go to the Ramban. The great Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who lived 750 years ago, one of the most famous commentaries on the Torah, he says that this is not a rebuke. This is something far more important and sublime. This is a prophecy of the entire history of the world, no less. It, as we mentioned, it covers the entire story of the Jewish people, starting with God creating the heavens and the earth, whom he calls to listen to his words, and how he chose Israel and he brought us on eagle's wings. There's a verse that says, Kenesher Ya'ir Kino, like the eagle carries its young, which is perhaps a connection, a reference to what it says in Exodus, where God says, I brought you to me, al kanfei nisharim, on the wings of eagles. So it connects that to the receiving of the Torah, and then it talks about that Israel gets tremendous bounty and blessings from the land. They are described in the Parsha, the fatness of the earth, and so forth and so on. And then Israel gets fat and kicks, rebels against God, follows idols, and worships the gods of the nations. God is angry, brings about that they're praying to things that cannot help them, that have no power, and God exiles them to the four corners of the earth. There is a desire that Israel should be erased from the pages of history, but God will not allow that to happen because of what I mentioned before, so that his name shouldn't be profaned, that the nations shouldn't say that God couldn't fulfill his promise to his people. And in the end, there will be God's vengeance upon the enemies of God, and we'll see who those are shortly. And God will then bring the people back to their land. The nations of the world will sing the praises of Israel, and the land shall atone for his people. This is all of history, says the Ramban. What makes this prophecy so incredible? The fact that when it was spoken, maybe 90% of it hadn't happened yet. And the 90% wasn't going to happen 2 years after. We're talking about centuries and millennia. This was spoken to the people before they even entered the land of Israel by Moses at the plains of Moab, at the entrance to the Holy Land where he was not allowed to go. That's when this was all saying. Only the first part about God choosing Israel and giving them the Torah had happened yet. The rest of it, coming into the land, being blessed with the bounty, rebelling, idol worship, exile, suffering, ultimate redemption, and God's justice and vengeance upon the enemies of God, none of that had happened yet. Wow. Says the Ramban, imagine an astrologer would have written all this. People would be going, this guy is amazing. This is Nostradamus, right? Now, if somebody 5 years ago would have written, there's going to be a pandemic coming out of China, people would go, wow, I want to know this guy's predictions for the stock market and for the horse races, because this is an amazing thing. Lehavdil, to make a distinction, because one cannot compare. God is giving us the entire future history of the Jewish people. And the Ramban says there are those who may want to think that this Haazinu only goes up to the second temple, that really the second temple, which was a redemption of sorts, is the end, and now we're in uncharted territory. Ramban says not at all. We're not in uncharted territory. The second temple was really not significant in this scheme of Haazinu, because first of all, the redemption in Haazinu is that the nations of the world will sing the praises of the Jewish nation. That didn't happen at the times of the second temple. We weren't respected very much at all. Nowadays, we're beginning to see the nations of the world singing the praises of Israel, so that's something to keep note of. That may be an indication of this phase where we are in the map, as it were. At the second temple time, God had not taken vengeance upon his enemies at all. You had the idolatrous powers, Rome, Babylonia, Syria, they were all still ascendant in the world, Persia, whatever. So that didn't happen either. So those things haven't yet come true, says the Ramban. We're really in the middle. And perhaps that's why we don't sing it, because we're in the middle. Because it says in the Psalms, Shir HaMa'alot, the Song of Ascents, B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, Hayinu Kechomim, when God brings back the remnant of Israel. In other words, at the end, at the redemption time, when this has come full circle, and we are like the dreamers that we dreamed of those days. So then, Az Yimalei Sechok Pino, then we can fill our mouths with laughter and our tongues with joy. U'Lshonenu Rina. We don't sing until then. So we're not singing Haazinu because it's not finished. It's still very much in process. Why did they sing it in the temple on the Sabbath at the time of the additional offering? Perhaps because the Sabbath's unique feature is that the Sabbath is Me'ein Olam Haba. It is a taste of the world to come. It is a time when we are supposed to feel as if we are tasting the messianic redemption era, whatever you prefer to call it. And so since it is a taste of the future times, that's enough of a taste for us to sing Haazinu with joy and confidence that we know that that's where we are headed. And that's an important thing, to know where we are headed. Now, to be sure, Haazinu contains within it some prophecies which are quite striking. For example, there are some references which could easily be applied to the Holocaust. There's a phrase there that our memory would be erased from the history books, from the world, from humanity. Well, there was a fellow who wanted to do just that. And before that phrase, it says, Af ehem. Amarti af ehem. I shall af ehem. What does af ehem mean in English? There are a couple of translations. The Seforno says it comes from the phrase, the word pe'ah, af ehem, pe'ah, which refers to a corner. In other words, that God will save a corner of his people, that there will be a tremendous destruction. and large numbers of Israel will perish. But God will preserve a corner of the people of Israel. Well, if that didn't happen in the Shoah, then I mean, it seems to be that's a prophecy to that. The Abarbanel has another explanation, which also fits into Jewish history, and the Ramban is the one who perhaps sees this one, that God says, af ehem, the same word corner, but he's saying that God spread us to the four corners of the earth. Why so? Well, when Esav was coming to meet Jacob was afraid that Esav was going to come and attack, so he divided up his family into different camps. And he says, if Esav comes and smites one camp, then the other camp can escape. In other words, that the Jews were split up and sent to different parts of the world so that if something happened to one group of Jews, well, the nation of Israel will survive elsewhere. And indeed, that is the course of Jewish history. And the Ramban points that out, that when the Jews were thriving in France, they may have been suffering in Spain. And when they were thriving in Spain, they may have been suffering in France or in England, and suffering in England, doing well in Holland and Germany and Poland and so forth and so on. We always had a place where it was not the right place to be. And hence the wandering Jew, to go from one place where it was bad to a place where it was better until it turned bad in that new place, and then we had to go someplace else. So we were spread to the four corners of the earth, so that exactly we would be preserved as a nation, even if one corner had a rough time about them. The Ramban and the Abarbanel was a witness to the Spanish Inquisition. So he certainly knew of what he spoke. This is a prophecy. This is all told to Moses before they even get into the land of Israel. And yet it happened 2 millennia later. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. That's perhaps a reference to the Shoah, to the exiles of Israel. There's an explanation for anti-Semitism in this. It's a very short one. The Ramban points it out. He says that the Shirah, this song, refers to God's enemies. Who are God's enemies? So the Ramban tells us who God's enemies are, the ones who hate and want to destroy Israel. Why are they considered God's enemies? Because, why do they want to destroy Israel? Because Israel persists with stubbornness to keep God's Torah, to keep God's faith, to keep God's morality. And these nations don't like that. And therefore they fight against God by fighting against us. Because if we're not there keeping God's word, then there will be no one, and then they will have a victory. And this is even Yamach Shemo, may his memory be blotted out, the leader of Germany in the Second World War, said so much in his writings that one of the reasons why the Jews should be hated is because they gave the world a conscience. They made the people feel guilty because they insisted on morality. But Ramban, of course, really is directing his dig at the Christians who couldn't stand the fact that we weren't converting to their religion. But that is his explanation for anti-Semitism, and indeed it may be perhaps the most truthful one of all. Doesn't need my approval. The Ramban was such a great scholar that if he is saying it, you can bank on it. So the prophecies here are all in process. It is still happening. And this is why it's so important, and this is why the heavens and the earth are witnesses. Because we don't know, we read the headlines. And it's normal to feel a little apprehension about what's going on in the world. Do we know? Does anybody know what's going to be? The answer is yes. The heavens and the earth know what's going to be. The song of Haazinu knows what's going to be. And this song and the heavens and the earth, they all say the same thing. Harninu goyim amo, the nations of the world will eventually sing the praises of Israel. God will bring his people home. V'chiper admato amo, the land will atone, will bring forgiveness, will bring fixing and reunity with God in the Holy Land, in God's land. Its ending is glorious, and there is no doubt that that ending will indeed come to pass. The world will not be destroyed. Haazinu promises us, the heavens and the earth are witnesses. One could even say that they are witnesses beyond time. They're telling us not what's going to be, but what they have seen already take place, because they can see the future, because God allows that. God made this song and the heavens and the earth be these witnesses because God knows the future, because God is involved in the future. This incredible prophecy from before 90% of it happened, which then unfolds over centuries and millennia and is still happening, is 100% true. What are we supposed to do about it? Very simple. We maintain our faith. We go forward with our mission to fix the world, to fix our corners of the world. We are about to enter into the holiday of Sukkot, which is a time of simcha. Zman simchatenu v'samachta b'chagecha. You must rejoice on your holiday. We rejoice. We go forward with joy and confidence. That's what we can do. Instead of sitting around and turning on the news every 5 minutes and moping, don't do it. Take confidence. Live your life, and things are going to be amazing. That's what Haazinu tells us. Now we can understand again why we recited it, why we sang it in the Sabbath in the temple. Because the Sabbath is that future time. We have it every week. We have a taste of that future time, and then we are able to sing the song. And I just want to conclude with a thought from my teacher, Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. It says in the Song of Haazinu at the beginning, it says, Hatzur tamim pa'olo ki chol derachav mishpat. El emunah ve'in avol tzadik v'yasharhu. The first phrase, the rock, his work is perfect. What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? The rabbis take the word tzur, which means rock, to mean also tzayar, the painter. God as the cosmic artist painting history on the canvas of the world. What does that mean? So Rav Aaron explains that when you go to see a great work of art, if you go right up to it and look at it from close range, you will not appreciate it. You'll see the little imperfections, you'll see the threads of the canvas perhaps, you'll see colors and things, but it won't mean anything to you. Only when you back away to see the work of art at a distance, then, oh, that's the Mona Lisa. Oh, she's smiling. She's not smiling. She's thinking about smiling. She was smiling a minute ago. Now she's not. Whatever. That's the way we relate to works of art. And so too it is with the canvas, with the art of history, that we need to take a step back and to see it from a distance. And then when we see it from a distance, at the end, when the redemption has happened, when all of these things have happened, then everything that happened on the way, all of a sudden will make sense, will have context, and we'll see how God's cosmic work of art is perfection. And so let us go forth with confidence, with joy to greet the festival of Sukkot. We have witnesses that the future is bright. Shavua Tov and Chag Sameach.